How are you, Maria? I'm English, so I have to be polite and ask, how's things? Maria's frozen. Did you do that, Lotte? Was that one of your... Is that how you pronounce your name, by the way? Is it a hard E?
Lotte, yeah. Yeah.
And Maria, are you Maria, or is there a different sound of your name?
My connection is, it seems to be not doing that well. Are you okay? Are you hearing me okay, or?
Yes, yeah.
Okay, because you are a bit woom. Yeah. Yeah, my name is Marija Luīze. So it is pretty much like that. Yeah.
Stress the second.
Marija. Yeah.
Maria. Okay. I will harshly stress the second syllable. Maria.
No, it's just Marija, you know.
Maria. Okay, so like
no, it's
collapse.
Just
Maria.
a single sound. Marija.
Maria.
It's just poof here and then it's away. Just Marija.
Right. So is that the name of your ghost then? Poof.
Yes.
Poof and Maria.
Yeah.
Lotte, Maria, and Poof. So what's it like being a poet in Latvia? Is it good?
It's freaking awesome.
Is it?
Yeah, the best. Absolutely.
So why are you both poets? I'm just going to be blunt today. I think it's great to ask questions like this. It's almost like you got to have a great question or a terrible question. But I think the question, why do you bother writing poetry, is a really good question.
It's a horrible question.
Tell me why. Tell me why it's a horrible question. Because you don't know.
It's a... No, I mean, I can answer it, but the first time you hear this question, it's like, you know?
Well, why do you bother writing poetry, Lotte?
I like to do it. I think it's a nice way to think about stuff. Writing. And I just kind of enjoy the possibilities of the feelings of words, and creating like creating images also. I think in poetry is important for me, but yeah, I just I think I've grown to enjoy doing it. Yeah.
And Maria?
I don't think I like writing poetry because it can be fun, and it can also be quite stressful, because when I focus really hard on something, it gets me nervous. So I wouldn't say that I really enjoy the process. But same goes with more or less everything else I do, that I try to do well, that it just gets me nervous. I don't know, I think it's a normal thing. But yeah, I why do I write poetry? Because I do, you know, I just have this urge to do that. I don't know, I can choose a certain point in my life out of which it grew, or something, or some one aspect or another, but it's I think it's more alive, you know. I can, I guess, just look at the fact that I do write poetry and try to, you know, see something in it, like not like why, but how, or something like that. Because yeah, I have these stories of how I started to write poetry and stuff, but I in a way find them like really well, untrue in a way, because it's just one side of it, very simple and not that like important to the heart side of it. I don't know. Yeah.
Yeah, I think the question
Did I
is
reply to the question?
beautiful answers. Yeah, I think the question is grotesque, Lotte. You're right, because it has a kind of smell of utility. I think people ask us that question because they're asking like, why, like, what's the purpose? And obviously both of your answers are kind of saying, well, that's not the point of poetry, is to generate a product that I'm writing. But that creates like a second question then that I think about a lot, which is about like freedom of will. Is it chance that led you to writing? Because for me, it was just a series of accidents which led me to what poetry is. Or do you feel like it's something that actually is kind of part of what you're really choosing to do, or is part of your will? You know, it's a question of free will, I think, poetry. Like, are you writing the poetry, or is the poetry writing you? Because I'm definitely in the first camp. I'm writing the poetry. I could just stop tomorrow, you know? So I don't know how you feel about that. Oh my God.
I have this there is this organization called Latvian Literature. They organized the Latvian stand in London Book Fair and do translations and so on. And they did these cards with Latvian writers' quotes from books or something. And I have one for years at my fridge, you know, pinned to it. And it's by Jānis Joņevs, and it goes, "Is the song about me, or am I about the song?" And it kind of really resonates with what you're saying. I don't know, but it is in a way a bit different because yeah, because it's obvious that neither, you know, the song just is, and neither it is about you nor you are about it. But yeah, is poetry writing us, or are we writing poetry? Both, probably. You know, it is a relationship. You put something in it, you get something back, and you can choose the proportions of that, probably.
Yeah. I have a lot to say to that, but I'll let Lotte answer. What do you think, Lotte?
Oh, Marija said it so well, though. I think it's hard to say why I started to write things, but I just know that in childhood I used to like to write like stories and to create like kind of my own books, also with illustrations and things. So kind of this expression with writing and drawing and just kind of imagining things is somehow, since childhood, it feels very natural to me in a way. But I don't think that I ever really thought that I would write poetry. But yeah, I remember that when I was like maybe 12 or 13, I heard one poem by Georg Trakl. I don't know how it would, yeah, you know him. So, and I don't know what I understood from it, but it just had this very, very powerful vibe of like just something very kind of captivating. And so I asked the translator who read the poem to give me the book, and so I wrote it down in my notebook, and somehow, yeah, with time I just got into it. And I think when I was younger, I remember more like moments when I would like go to bed and be like suddenly like, oh no, a poem, and then I have to like get up and write it down or something. And but now it's more like if I do the work, then the poems come, but if I neglect them, they don't show up much. But yeah, you have to. But if I really kind of make space for the poems, then they also kind of start to appear by themselves sometimes.
Oh, beautifully expressed. Yeah, I think it's a spectrum and a strange set of questions for poets because of the history of poetry. I think, you know, like poets have not been perceived as workers. I don't mean that in the communist Mayakovsky sense. I mean that in the laboring, you know, it's like inspiration falls upon us. We were born to be poets, which I think is not true. But at the same time, we obviously are operating in a field which is so outside of, say, market value or use, that there's a bizarre choice that we've made to ally ourselves to something that very few people read. I mean, your work is obviously exceptional enough that Latvian Literature and other people have recommended your work to me. So within like the modern career world, your work and your commitment to it has got to this conversation and another conversation and another event and a book. But you also write in Latvian with a tiny language population. So, you know, really, you kind of have to be writing a bit for yourself. And if you don't know why you're writing for yourself, you're just going to leave that question alone. That's beautiful, I think, but I find that hard. I have to ask myself, why am I doing this? Because I want to be able to one day just quit if I want to and not feel guilty, you know? Because if you feel like you're possessed to write.
Why would you feel guilty?
Because if you feel like people have praised you, or you're possessed by some ability, or you're a poet, which is never what I would introduce myself as. I would never say I'm a poet, because you sound like a divvy.
Yeah, like a moron.
Yeah, but that's, in a way, that's not fair on us, right? Because that's not
I disagree.
Go on. Please disagree. That would be lovely.
Well, I mean, I think it is very important to decide to not care about all these other people and what it sounds like if you say you're a poet or not, because who cares, you know? You define what it is. You say I'm a poet, you know, it can mean all kinds of things, not just this one stereotypical. It's same like why I find it's like identifying with your gender kind of also, you know, that you decide, okay, well, I'm a woman, but it doesn't mean anything by itself. You know, it's just like that. And I can put my definition in it by how I am this or something else. Also, I can say I'm a poet and do, you know, whatever, because, well, I just am, you know, this is also poetry. Let those literature historians decide for themselves how to perceive this.
I think I mean more in like a social way in England, just because of the weight of the word beyond my control. I mean, obviously I am a poet and my website says I am, and I would say so to other poets, but at say a party, it means that I have basically aligned myself with a word that's been used up by pretentious post-romantic wannabes who hang around East London saying I'm a poet. Meanwhile, I spend 8 hours a day working on my poems, but I'd rather call myself a writer. That word is more, I mean, to you, I'm happy to say, Marija, I'm a poet, but outside of that, I don't know, the word is heavy. So I think it's profitable to ask you, even though it's a horrible question, like what possesses you to do that? You know, is it from inside, or is it from the world? Is it just that the world said to you both, hey, you're good at poetry?
I think I've had
Sounds like you live in a pretty harsh society.
In my mind, yeah.
Lotte was saying something. I'm sorry.
I had a period when I thought that I have to quit writing poetry. And so I kind of really did that. But it was more like, I think I did it more because I thought that the poetry might not be as good as I would like it to be. And so, of course, it's quite stupid in a way, because you decide not to work on the poetry, but you know, if you would work on it, it would get better probably. But so you decide not to do it, so not to make any mistakes. And so I didn't write for some time, but it was more like suppressing the actual feeling that I would like to actually do it. And if I would see some poets like reading poetry in readings or something, I would feel like some kind of like a bit of resentment or something. because I think I still kind of wanted to do it, and maybe I even needed to do it for myself, really. But yeah, I was just kind of being like in denial. But then yeah, so then for some while I let myself do it again, but I just didn't show it to anyone. And then at some point I was working on the poems so many times, like trying to perfect them so much, that I was kind of also going nuts, because I couldn't understand were they good, were they bad, what was going on. So at some point I needed to show them to someone, and then I did, yeah. And I think since then I've been working like more with poetry, and like in a more maybe serious manner than before. Yeah.
Sounds like you have. No, it sounds like you have a healthy amount of self-knowledge. You know, I think that that's a lot better than just blindly digging away at something, which is really for a small amount of people. How did you start writing poetry, Marija? Did you start when you were really young?
I am planning on staying young forever, so yes.
Oh, my harsh world's coming in again. I'm sorry, it's not going to happen.
Oh. No, I'm still thinking kind of about the previous question, because all this working idea is bothering me a bit. Because I'm really exploring where it is like healthy, good, keeping myself busy, progressing in what I like, getting better at it, and where it is like some kind of rotten capitalist idea of how you have to push yourself and produce more and more, and then that defines you being like a successful person or something. I'm really trying to stay away from this wanting to become successful and getting the money at the appreciation, and because I think those all are okay needs that people have, but it shouldn't be the core ever of what I'm doing. And in that sense, I find it perfectly logical to work in art, because I find it much more bizarre sometimes seeing people do these jobs that like they identify with this life where they go to the job they hate, they do it 8 hours a day, they get back home, like, I don't know, have a beer, watch a movie, or just surf the internet, have a fight with their loved ones, and you know, go to bed, wake up in the morning, and so on, and not be like, not having the instruments to reflect on your inner processes, not having the instruments to just stop and like also reflect on your relationships with people around you and the society and so on. You know, you have to do something creative, let's call it that. I don't like the word, but you have to do something art-like, I believe, to be able to like get where you're at and what is happening. And I find that perfectly natural need. And it's cool that and not also cool, but just normal that I can get paid for doing this, because you know, I don't know. But yeah, but I'm really a bit struggling with these things. That
in your life,
what
you're struggling
does
with that
work
question, you
mean to me?
mean?
Yeah, and at the moment, kind of really thinking about it. When I am trying for something that I actually believe in and find right, and when I'm trying for some ideals that are not mine, actually.
But I think if you are
Sorry, I wanted to get that out.
No, that's good. I think if you then choose to be a poet and a photographer, you've already made that choice, right? So what happens is the other way. I mean, that's what's happened to me. I chose not to work in those kind of jobs. I became a poet. Then what? I mean, I have a lot of respect for people who do that, because I don't know how they do it. Because it's an amazing freedom to be able to do things creatively and also not starve, because people don't want to buy my poems. So I think I agree with you completely. And the fact that we're having this conversation means that we've all made that decision, right? We've all decided, because I'm not interviewing two people who sell paper for a living or two engineers. We're talking to three poets talking. So I think we've made that decision. The question is now, how do you operate in the modern world, you know? And that relates to the first question of why you write, because what happens to a lot of people is they write for pure reasons, and then it becomes a job.
Right.
I think the situation that I am in is that I work both in illustration and poetry, and somehow right now I've managed to have illustration be my job, and I really don't have to do anything else to earn money. And it's still a very creative job. And like, I can also work on my books. I'm working right now on one of my books also. But also all the projects are very different, and it's interesting to do it. And so it is a job, but then again, of course, I have also like to work with clients. So sometimes I have to also take in account like their thoughts on things. Like, although usually they trust what I do, but still, it's not like complete freedom because it's still work. But then I really kind of enjoy it a lot that I have poetry, and it's like, it feels like something completely my own, and I can do it, and I can just stop doing it, and nobody really needs it. And so I kind of really treasure this this thing that I can have like poetry, but also still be working in a creative field, because I have tried to work in a like job a bit, and it's always ended like in a kind of a depressive state. So I know I can't do that, but as a freelancer, it really fits me quite well. But still, it's kind of nice to have these both things, and it's nice to earn some money from poetry, but I really kind of like that I don't have to. It's still kind of a thing that is a very much my free will to do it. I don't know.
Yeah, that's beautiful. I feel exactly the same as you. I think if you can find a way to have a job that connects to poetry somehow, that's an incredible achievement, because that's how I feel based on what you were saying, Marija. Like, I don't have a choice to do that 9 to 5. I tried and I can't do it. So I have to find another way. Is your photography, Marija, is that part of your job, or is that also just purely?
No. Photography is really not a thing I get paid for. Like it is totally on a. Now you guys stopped. Now you're back. How is the connection doing now?
It's okay. There's a tiny lag, but it's kind of a good effect. It makes you look like a ghost. It's really helpful.
Yeah. Yes. Okay. So now, I don't know why you've gotten to the idea that I do photography. Like, seriously, I don't know. It is really more like a hobby. I've participated a couple of times in these competitions, and yeah, it is a way to express something. I do work on that, but that like when I was a teen, I used to take photos of friends, music concerts or something, and then it was kind of like going in a profession direction, but that's about it. You know, it stopped at some point, and no, now it's just I like taking pictures. That's it. Yeah.
Fair enough.
I like. Yeah.
It's all over your bio, and you sent me loads of photos. That's why.
What?
That's why. That's why.
I sent you a lot of photos. When?
You know what I mean. Our collaboration was based on zoo photos, but
Okay. Yes. Yeah.
So listen, you both do visual things anyway, even if you're not a professional photographer. Congratulations, Lotte, on being a professional illustrator.
Yeah.
There's a huge movement across Europe. A lot of what I do with the festival is bring people who are innovating in 2 areas. One is performance. I'm really interested in how the reading is kind of a bit boring, and how people can interrogate live space and collaboration. And the other is visual poetry. I'm really interested in how there's like a new generation of like asemic writers, concrete poets, visual poets. Now, I didn't necessarily see like photo poetry or illustrative poetry in your work, but you both obviously, even if you're not a professional photographer, Marija, you're obviously interested. And Lotte, your website's very beautiful. And congratulations on your professional success.
Thanks.
You're obviously both interested in visual arts, you know, which is a whole different field of practice, which I find often affects the poetry that people write. So I'm interested, do you see the concepts of visual art, be it photography, be it illustration, be it the visual in general, to be completely separate from your poetry? Or is there connections between the two in the way that you're working creatively, or in your concerns or your methods?
Well, I graduated arts high school, like fine arts high school. I was studying in the multimedia art department there, but it was kind of really strict on academic painting and drawing, no matter what you chose to do. And now I'm also studying painting in the art academy, and I find that some kind of sense of composition, for example, is something that is probably connected to writing. Like just that I have actively developed intuition. I think while studying these things, it is kind of you can't do without it. Just being able to just look at something and decide, okay, this needs that, you know, just looking at something and getting back to it and so on. So I think kind of that approach is something that I have gained from this sphere. That would be one.
I kind of feel similar to what Marija said. And I also think that people who work with visual art should read and that people who read should look at paintings and look at visual art. People who write, maybe, but yeah, and that's, I think it is important because, well, I feel like my poetry is quite visual, maybe. It's definitely not like something that is connected with some literature theories or like so much like the language itself, but maybe much more about like some kind of yeah, like some kind of scenes and feelings and very much more like intuitive things. And I think yeah, that somehow they both are connected, but it's not very easy to like draw something in according to what I have written, because it's like I already see it in my head when I write it, and then it's pretty hard to draw it so it wouldn't be just the same thing. And yeah, but
Interesting.
yeah,
That's interesting. You see them as basically both creative enterprises that explore the same idea but in different methods. Do you ever synthesize them? Do you ever think that the visual appearance of the poems on the page are something to be altered? Do you play with language on the page in your works, or are you more interested in keeping to a kind of closer, strict form?
Well, this is actually an interesting question, because sometimes I do end up in a situation where I've written a poem and there is this one line that just visually irritates me because it doesn't look good. Like the shape of the poem, it is ruined by that line. And then I have to think about what are my priorities here, and if I can find a compromise, and if that is a good thing to do. But yes, I think about these things, and but it is not that often a problem. It just sometimes happens like that, because well, I don't write in a like strict form, and I'm not a big fan of rhymes and stuff like that. So, but I still have this inner sense of rhythm in the text, and when doing it in short lines, it usually isn't that much of a problem, because to keep the rhythm going, they have to be more or less the same length on the lines. And if they are sometimes longer, sometimes shorter, that's also a rhythm, you know, you can see. And it usually, if the poem is all right, it also, well, it also tends to look all right. Yeah, so it's fine. But I'm not really trying to do visual poetry in a sense, like making a drawing out of it or something. But yes, somehow that visual experience is important. For example, I really like to see in other poets' books where if they play with just having this really big text and then just a small line, and it works together. It does dance or sort of, I don't know. Yeah, I think about those things, if that's the question.
It is, yeah, and that's a very good answer. Thank you so much. It is all instinctive.
Well, you're very welcome.
Oh, it's my pleasure. Lotte?
I also don't really work with like visual poems. Somehow, I'm just not really interested in it, but I also noticed the same thing that Marija said, that if the poem is good and finished, it also looks good and finished most of the time. And it also has its own character, also visually. I had this one poem that was really long, and it was quite intimate poem, and I wrote it very like, it's not often, but sometimes the poems that I write, I can just write like down in one way, and then I have to tweak it very, very little because sometimes I work on poems a lot after when it's written. But this one was one of the poems that that I just wrote in one single like sitting, and then I didn't do much with it. But afterwards, I noticed that it kind of like is written so that it makes like this wave, and that was very interesting to me because it was accidental, but it fitted the poem very well. And yeah, and it is important to me when I see like the poems, like how they look, and sometimes they look in a way that I don't even want to read them. But sometimes the poems I see, I feel like they are very inviting just by the look at them. So yeah, it's interesting to think about these things, but I also don't really use it as an art form. Or yeah.
Fair enough. Yeah, I think it's interesting how if you both got artistic practices which are very developed, that it's still instinctual, because I do think poets, they read before they see, you know, and we all have this strange, mysterious process of shaping a poem, of choosing lines, but still the majority of readers, and definitely poets, open a book and they immediately go to the semantic content. They don't look at the negative space, at the gestures, at the font, at the lines. So you obviously have an advantage where you're in touch with your instincts there, but maybe in the future it fuses. I'm interested in like what's happening in Latvia now. I mean, obviously nobody knows their own country super well because you're so close to it, but how are you perceiving poetry at the moment? Like, obviously both of you have been celebrated and you're obviously part of a generation of people. Does it feel like that there's like a scene in Latvia that's interesting, or not so much?
Well, actually, and we have talked with Lotte about this, as I have with a couple of people. that it is really a blessing to have these other poets around, because actually there is a scene and a generation, and it is really just a blast working together with these people. I feel very close to them, and it's also always very happy, a very happy thing to get to do something together. And yeah, I have a very big interest in listening to them, in reading their works. I think there's a lot of really splendid work happening, and yeah, I'm just really excited about it all. And yeah, I feel like I'm talking so saying so many positive things that there should be like a catch or something, but I really can't think of anything at the moment, except for maybe that it is in general not that easy to be, you know, working in culture, etc. But it is like that everywhere, I suppose. And yeah, well, I don't know. The scene I am in is really kind of like my gang, you know. I'm proud of it. I'm really happy to be there, and I don't know, it's really cool.
You have a gang. Okay.
Thanks. Be proud. Yeah.
Lotte?
Yeah, well, I started to write poetry more like when I was like 14 years old or something, 14, 16, 17. And then I had like some friends who wrote poems, and so we would go to like poetry readings in some bars and everything. But at some point, all of them stopped writing poetry except me, I think. And I also didn't like publish a book or anything. And so after that, I stopped writing for a while. And then when I started to write again, it led to this book in which also is Marija's poems and some other young poets' poetry, like it's an anthology. And somehow after this anthology and meeting all these young poets, it kind of, I think, it still feels like we have this generation feeling in this between. Also some other poets who are not in the book are great, but yeah, like and it's really nice to have them around, because before it felt like, I don't know, like something was missing a bit, and like I didn't fit with the ones that were older, and I just didn't have really like friends who were poets so much. I had like most of my friends were artists, and now I feel like we have this kind of good connection with some of the poets, and so during summer I can invite them to my garden, and yeah, and we can just dance or something. We don't really talk so much about poetry, but
Unbelievable.
it's just yeah. I also have to say that I feel this proud kind of feeling. It's like if I'm with them, I feel like, yeah, that I'm just kind of proud of them, because I like their work too, and it's nice. Yeah.
It sounds impossibly idyllic, and like you all live in a magical forest realm where everyone is like, I mean, just
welcome to Latvia.
Kind of, yeah.
Don't know about that. I've been to Latvia. Don't know about that.
Come now. It was the wrong time.
Yeah.
No, but actually, for me, writing poetry was from the very beginning. Well, very beginning, I don't know, very beginning of getting stuff out there. was very tightly connected to other people, because basically what happened is I met people that my age that were writing poetry at the very beginning of me trying to do it as well, and they invited me in, saying, hey, let's try something together, you know. And so from the very beginning, it was kind of also a social thing of exciting events happening, both like really underground, closed things, and also trying to get out there in the public and participate in poetry slams or something. And yeah, it was for me, it was a party from the very beginning, kind of.
And is there a
which
specific...
is, I think, one of the...
Please go ahead.
Sorry, is there a specific
style? Is
okay.
there like a style or a subject? Is there a way that you're kind of united as a generation in terms of the actual poetry, or is it just social?
What do you, Lotte, think?
I feel like it has this kind of sense of naivety, maybe, that could characterize it a bit, but then again, like, Raymond is writing very differently, but he can write also in a more naive way.
Could you unpack what you mean by naive?
Yeah, it's hard to define, but I think like some other poets before used a lot of irony, and maybe we do it less. I don't know. But
so
yeah, hard to say.
There's a new movement called the New Sincerity Movement. Have you come across that in America, where the poems are trying to reintegrate sincerity? And is it like that, where the poems are not at all experimental or ironic? They're kind of like first person, emotional insight, kind of conversational poetry? Is that what it's like?
No, I mean, form-wise, there is a lot of experimentation, I think. We write from one another quite quite differently. And I think that most of us are constantly kind of expanding the style, and also these themes and symbols, and well, there are interesting things happening just like text-wise, but I think that this naivety or this sincerity, I agree with that it is a thing that has sprung kind of well, as I perceive it, a bit recently, but it is not that much this form-wise thing, but just an approach, like the inner attieksme,
attitude.
I don't know, attitude, yes.
And is it
something
quite
like that,
contained in Latvia, in Riga, or do you have contacts and exchanges with poets in different countries, in the Baltic or Poland or other parts of Europe, or is it quite specific to Latvia because of the language?
It's hard to say. I don't really know that much about what is happening in other countries in poetry right now, that much. I had this workshop on translating poetry, and then there were like poets from Lithuania and Estonia, and that was very interesting experience to meet like some of the younger generation poets who write there. But yeah, but I wouldn't say that I know like what is really happening there. But it was nice. I would like to actually know more, but it's I think this is a good way to do it, like during workshops or something like that. But I don't know how otherwise it would be possible in a good way. Like, yeah.
Well, before the pandemic, we had once in a while these international poetry events, and I don't feel like I'm in a closed very place, and also there are plenty of translations being published quite constantly, and well, to me it feels like that. And but yeah, well, I wouldn't also say that I'm very well aware of the tendencies in other countries or something, but yeah, there are, I highly appreciate for example that there is this publishing house Orbita that are Latvian, Russian authors there, and they publish also works by contemporary Russian poets and invite them for readings sometimes, and that has been a very wonderful chance for me to get to hear those authors and get to read their works translated in a very well, like read very good translations of them in Latvian as well. And I think that is really like a pearl we have around here in Riga. Well, it is a bit like capital orientated, these events. They sometimes there are things happening also outside Riga, but it is well, I am a bit sad about that. But it is the same with really anything that I don't know how many, like almost half of the population in Latvia or something lives in Riga. So it is obvious that, well, this is the center, and I would like to go out more maybe when there is a chance. But
yeah, I feel the same in England. Most things are in London, and I try and do a lot of events in different parts of England. If we'd have got the actual festival happening, there was events in Manchester and Norwich, and I think every nation has that to a certain extent, but obviously with Latvia's population size, it must be really like that.
yeah,
okay,
yeah.
It's been a joy to speak with you both. Thank you for taking the time. We made it happen eventually. I'm sorry that we didn't get to meet in person. Maybe it was for the... But maybe in the future we will meet in Riga or London.
Or
nice. Thank you.
Some deserted place.
Some ghost land in between. Maybe in the middle of the Baltic Sea.
Yeah, let's do that.
It's a deal. It's a promise.
On a boat.
On a boat. Good luck with your professional drawing, Lotte. Good luck with your gang, Marija.
Yes, thanks. Good luck with your everything, Stephen.
With your everything, exactly.
That's exactly what I need luck for. My everything. Thank you so much.
May you have it.
Thank you for the conversation, both of you. Yeah.
Yeah, nice seeing you all.
Farewell. Be well.